Welcome, Flavia. You are co-founder and CEO at Fleet. But today we want to have a kind of broader conversation about you and your kind of journey. So I see that you founded Fleet back in 2015 with a view of making IoT kind of the next big revolution. But let's start before then, your own personal journey, which seems to have always been with space.
I'm a rocket scientist by background in reality, so I loved rockets. But when I graduated and I was in the Netherlands, actually, I learned about these small satellites. It was a big revolution that was happening in the world, and I was fascinated about it. And at the beginning, my passion for space and engineering came together. For the very first time, I saw that space was something different. So not big satellites, billions of dollars built by government and big companies, but suddenly everyone was doing space. Universities and SMEs and startups. At the beginning, it wasn't very clear. So I saw this wave of innovation in space. At the beginning, was absolutely not clear if it was just a university exercise or this was very real innovation. So these small satellites are big as a bottle of water or a shoebox. And because electronics were getting smaller, so people were launching them very close to Earth. So spending a fraction of the money of a big satellite, and I'm like, what can we do with this? Sadly, universities were using them, and it was just growing the momentum. But innovation takes time, and space innovation takes even longer. So I spent many years in Europe working on these little things. Then I met my husband, and fell in love with the Australian, and I moved to Australia. And that was 2012, 2013. I was at the time working with these small satellites to launch them, in low Earth orbit, to the moon, to Mars. I really loved the concept. In that year, some companies started using them. And I'm like Planet Aspire for commercial. They were raising capital money on these small satellites. And I'm like, wow, there is a big change. But I was in Australia. I became a mom. And I've got a 7 years old, a 4 years old. I was a high qualified mom. I was at home, didn't have a visa yet. So I'm like, what am I going to do in my life, And these kids were hard with rocket science. So I was there like, And I said, well, I should start a startup. But I was not really a startup person. I've always worked in corporate, with big corporate, very much with innovation, but in big organizations. So startup, I didn't know what it was. And surely not a space startup that is not in Silicon Valley was not a thing. So I met my co-founder. He's like, yeah, we should definitely start a startup. And I'm like, about what? Like, what? What is it about? And he's like, I like space. And I'm like, space is gonna change the world. It's gonna change how telecommunication is gonna be done. But at that time, we really didn't. At the time, so I really wanted to keep working in space, and I always felt that my destiny in life was doing something in space. I wasn't sure about what. I had patents in my past with space technologies, but it was new. So I'm like, okay, what I'm gonna do with these space things? And it's like, we need to find what customers want. And I'm like, it's an interesting concept. Who are the customers? Like, this is all new to me. Like, our customers where? In the space industry. And it's like, no, the customers are in the other industries. So we founded another startup, me and him and another person, just to, I'm very passionate about STEM. So school kids to launch satellites in space, okay? And then during this journey, I remember going to a conference, and that was probably 2014. And I entered this conference for the very first time. There is this panel about IoT. I didn't even know the word. So they say, industrial IoT is going to change the world. IoT is like trillion of devices coming online, is the next industrial revolution. So a lot of big words. And I'm like, wow, like this is happening. Like, and you kind of understand. A lot of people just hear it, but in my mind, there was, wow, this is really a revolution. A few people actually understand what it means. Like, I think when industry, before computer came out in the industry, people had no idea what computer will do to the way we operate. And people still got no clue about IoT. Like, yeah, we connect a couple of devices. Sure, you will see in 10 years, like, you know, we will not recognize ourselves. So 5 years ago was the beginning, and I was like, so what does that mean? I mean, they're talking about trillion of devices, like that's a big number, you know, who's gonna connect them all? Like they're talking about agriculture, they're talking about water, they're talking about mining, talking about maritime, but it will cost like 10 times global GDP to connect these things, you know, something else needs to come with it.
Yeah.
So I remember standing up and ask about this, and I'm like, who's gonna build that comes for all this? And they say someone will do it. And I'm like, I'll do it. So this is where Fleet started.
Nice. And I think that's such a nice way to do it, where you've got another industry which has got solutions, but without applying them to something else, then these things don't really connect. So if we then talk about then IoT and what IoT means to you, you for as long as I've known you, you've always talked about industrial IoT. So this is like, and very much very large scale. So I really have always loved your thinking, because you understand, you really do think at global scale, like more than most. Most people think in an industry or whatever, you know, maybe it's a space part, but you're always thinking very big. So what does IoT actually mean to you, as far as kind of then the impact it can have on the world?
Listen, when I think about IoT, I mean, I don't like the word IoT in general, like Internet of Things. I mean, it's something that we will not mention it in 10 years. It's just something that we use now to give a name to innovation. How I see it is there are some technologies that are coming and can solve all problems, okay? I separate IoT in two big buckets. Let's say everything that happened on consumer level, that I think is gonna be fascinating. Okay, so this is the magic that all of us as people will live in our houses, in our cars. That's the magic. And that's IoT. It will be the magic of Alexa and the magic of the smart stuff around your house. I don't think we even know what that magic looks like. We start seeing it with the various, you know, voice recognition systems and smart things. Then there is the smart city, so like a community inside the city and all these interesting things that can happen there. I think consumer IoT, it's easy to understand. For me, it's magic. You know, everything like the phone to everything is magic for us, and it changes the way we operate. And a lot of people says the IoT will replace this in the consumer experience, right? And I love that part of IoT. I'm not a consumer person, but I understand, I love it. I breathe it. And I think we understand how it's going to change the way we live in our houses and drive our cars, and a self-driving car is an IoT system in a sense. What always fascinates me are industrial revolutions though. So consumers always follow industrial revolution changes. So you need to look at all the industrial revolution to understand that the consumer magic was always driven by big industry, wanted to make more money, inventing amazing technologies. It's hard to say. Sometimes even war, really horrible period, ignite innovation.
Yep.
Right? Innovation starts when people start, they got, unfortunately, different goals, different meaning. When there is a crisis, there where innovation thrive. So if you look at all the industrial revolution, when it was invented, all of them. But the third particular is interesting for me because it's in the internet for people, and it's the laptops and all these new things. It started with people that wanted, it's fascinating. You look at a person in front of an Apple computer or a Bill Gates computer. There's literally nothing. Like you click a couple of things, and it kind of reminds me of some of the tools in IoT right now. You click, you're like, woo, but it does nothing. So that was what it was. And now we have computers that send rockets to space, and they run companies remotely. This is in 20 years' time. And so for me, industrial IoTs that change the rapid industry that underpin the entire innovation in the world. And what I like about this particular industrial revolution that I think is connected to another, the reason why it's starting, because our earth is suffering. Like we are destroying this planet. Industries are not coping because they are destroying the planet. It's true. And the planet is pushing back. And there is a lot happening in terms of water, in terms of agriculture, in terms of fossils, in terms of resources, in which industry is slowing down because they push the boundaries without efficiency. That's the thing. They push boundaries, you know, and oil and gas companies put wells all over the world and distribution energy company everywhere. And we have literally burned every side of the world to find an agricultural patch. Not because we had to, but because the things that we do are so inefficient. So like burn a little bit more, we will plant there instead of looking at what we had. And the reason why agriculture and oil and gas, none of them didn't look at what we had, it's not because they didn't want to, because technologies were not there. But now technology are there, so literally you will have this hundreds of thousands of sensors. You don't know what you don't know. That's the thing about the world. That's what I say to all my customers. Listen, I don't know. If you don't know your problems, I cannot know your problems, but I can tell you that you don't know what you don't know. And that's management of big industries. And that's why it's going to change the world, like, because we need to reduce water consumption. We need to have a safer environment for people working, because it's mental how people work in 2020, you know, going in. Look at what happened in this particular year with coronavirus. You know, we are so people dependent that entire economy stopped.
Yeah, it is
so
quite amazing. And I think you're totally right there by thinking about kind of like the inefficiencies, and it's just easy to keep consuming, and it's only when you start hitting the limits of, you can't just keep doing what you've been doing, and something has to change. We all know it has to change, and IoT, connected devices, using data to make new decisions is our way of...
Is the new thing. It's sad to see the innovation always needs to happen when we hit the corner. That's sad, but, you know, hopefully we learn, you know what I mean?
Okay, so then we've talked there about some of then the challenges of then the IoT and kind of seeing it from your perspective, which really is satellite level view. But let's talk about then the skills that you need in this industry right now. So in order for us to survive, and kind of the idea here is that this is people when they're coming in and laying the foundations for their own IoT, let's help them build the right foundations. So what kind of skills and thinking should they be having when they're coming into this and looking at making investments, looking at making the changes themselves?
So I don't think IoT is different from anything else. That's what it fascinates me, you know. In the past 2 years, I have been looking at what happened when innovation hits anything. Okay, my co-founder is building a flying car. It's the most crazy thing. And you look at the dynamics of the society accepting of flying cars, and it's fascinating to see that the same dynamic of the society accepting IoT. Then you look back in time, where the same dynamics of the industry accept this SCADA system, and the same dynamic of people accepting a car instead of a horse. Like, we really struggle with change as humankind. We are not really good at changing. We get really comfortable in what we have because it works, and we don't want to touch it, and we don't want to be responsible of breaking it. Okay. So if you look at the history, and this is about connecting devices, data, or a flying car, it's always the same. Like, it's just fascinating to watch. It's a little bit sad because you're like, we don't learn. Like, every time there is a new innovation, we're like, oh my God, this is going to destroy everything. Like, that happened exactly the same 20 years ago. So I think the word, what is different to the world of 30 years ago is, I think, is more an agile approach. So there is this agile thing that is in the head of all the enterprises that I think is changing the game a little bit. It's changing the game because for them it's an approach. It's agile. We try and we fail and we try. It sounds silly, but it's very important. Because nowadays, even big corporates says, okay, I'm not sure about innovation, but I can give it a try. And then I might fail, but I might retry. That wasn't the same many years ago. Many years ago was just crazy people trying things in the basement, right? Now at least they give it a try. IoT is not different from any innovation. It's scary for no reason, because there is no reason to be scared of IoT. What is the scary part is that no one wants to be the first innovators. So they're all waiting and they're like, you try first. No, you try first. See if Bob does it. And if Bob does it, we will learn best practice. Okay, and if Bob and John and Tim does it in my application, then we'll do it. It's true. This is what 90% of the people do. There is something that I've learned though, that in every industrial revolution, if you look at it, there are some very big companies that die. So in the 10 years in which an industrial revolution starts, an industrial revolution finishes, you see dying some companies that you have well ever thought that I would die. And raising some company, you're like, who's that Ford guy? Ford? Like, what is it? Tesla? What is this guy? So there is that doesn't have to underestimate. So they're waiting to try stuff in IoT. It could lead the entire things to collapse, because we have seen in history. We've seen it.
Yeah, and sometimes if you are too scared to change, then you don't change, and then that is when it becomes a problem. So yeah, it's when to change and who to change, and also how big a company and the energy and effort it takes to change.
And the reality is that the problem is complicated. Like we know, Christine, that if you're working on an enterprise and you want to do an application because you want to measure your crop or you want to measure your energy line, and you're like, okay, I want an IoT solution. I've got this. I'm an innovator. I can demonstrate business. Then you look at the market. There are 100,000 companies that are telling you that they can do it. So that's hard, because how to scan, in them and say, okay, the due diligence is hard. Okay.
Yeah.
So you need to study. You need to learn things yourself. You need to get informed. You need to read. As a CEO, sometimes, this period that I'm not traveling, I'm like, oh, it's great. I'm not traveling. I'm not going to conference. I've been for 3 months in front of the computer, and it feels like I'm not learning. So I'm like, I go to website. I'm like, what is new? Something probably came out next month that I don't know. So I understand why it's hard, but it's everything. You need to maybe trust one partner and go for it. And there's going to be a lot of failures, but just hang in there. Yeah. This is world-changing technologies, It's fascinating when during this period people are like, oh, we're not good at IoT. We don't do the IoT deployment because it's not essential. We just do the essential stuff. And I'm like,
interesting. That's how you think.
And some other company that calls you is like, wow, we are doing essential stuff. Our workers cannot go to work. We need remote management. So you see who is going to make it, who is not going to make it.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then I asked you in preparation for this to describe your own kind of leadership style, and you talked about being very approachable, and this also maybe ties into what you're talking about the ability to fail, the ability to learn, very approachable, all ideas on the table. And then also you also talked about that success for you was also lots of little steps added together. Can you maybe explain or just talk about that a little bit more, just your leadership style and how you qualify and lead your business in that way?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I started as a background as an engineer, now I'm a CEO, so I'm learning on the job. Okay, so I don't know if I can teach anyone about leadership style. What I know about bringing innovation into a market, that is hard work. Okay, so you need to put your card on the table. So there is a limit, you need to sell the vision, but you also need to be honest and say, okay, this is where we can go, but this is what we have done. This is where we can go. This is what we have done. Let's work together to get there, okay? We have never done this, but we can do this because we are smart people. We are fast. We will work on it. With the team and with the customers is that ability to just keep moving. And when I see it talk about success step by step, I mean, like, you work in a startup. There is not a moment in a startup when you bring innovation in the market that you feel, oh, we made it. Like, yeah, I'm happy. This is success. Like, nah, that's not how it works, right? You know, so you have to celebrate that moment in which you're like, oh, I've nailed this. And that moment are like, oh, we have nailed that. And every step you do, that you do 10 hours on the back, it is what it is. Like, startup for me is bringing a new product, service, or whatever you're in the market that is super populated. It's hard work. And what would be success? If Fleet has got 1,000 employees, if I am rich, if we go IPO, if I got 1 million customers, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for me, success is that, wow, today we've got a new customer. Like, it's a success. And today, you know, we have developed this IP. This is a success. So I don't know how success really looks like. I know what it feels like, you know, when you reach that milestone. So we have 3 months milestone. When we reach them, like, well, this is a great success.
You touched on a lot of really nice stuff there, because you talked a lot about the vision of IoT, and a lot of it is the promise of tomorrow, but also the reality of today. And you talked a lot about working with other people, you know, that maybe you don't have all the answers yourselves. What about advice for somebody coming into the industry now about kind of that ecosystem and how to work in that ecosystem of today in order to create the promise of tomorrow?
Listen, it's still a messy ecosystem. There is still war in terms of protocols, winners, dynamics. I still don't understand it probably 100%. Sometimes I look at what I offer, I'm like, we're unique, like that guy. So it's very, very convoluted still. I think that the only key for IoT to succeed is laser focus on the customers. So IoT is not another technology. It's solving old problems in a new way with new technologies, a new thing. So laser focused on your customers, okay? And because, you know, you can start and say, oh, I like that protocol, I like those sensors, I like that data, I will build this, this, and that. And that's fine, because this is what technology startup does. But customers are all in a different world. So 90% of the customer in an organization probably don't understand anything about innovation and don't care. But there's always that champions that can tell you exactly what is needed for the success of that company. You need to listen to that and build around that, okay? And it takes time. So if I could go back in time, I would change some stuff I've learned this year, okay? So everyone talks about stuff and say you need to be laser focused on the customers. In IoT, it's all application focused, and no one gets it. So most of the people that are like, we have an IoT solution that is a central platform for everything in every industry, in every application, and you're like, wow, nah. We have a sensors that can serve everything, and you will put it here, you put it there, this cat, and it's this and that. Nah. Okay, that just can't work. You know, IoT, you want to enter in this amazing world, just focus on one thing. Understand that problem. Be the best at that. And you will understand IoT so profoundly because you will do it. Then you can slowly conquer everything. I've learned this lesson this year after 3 years, better late than ever, okay? And it's still really hard because you got a tendency after 3 months that you, oh, we could do that. You're like, nah. Oh, I see this beautiful new toys that is coming, and nah. Just ask the customer what they want. So that's the problem with IoT. There is a big promise, so everyone is completely unfocused.
Okay, so then what, in just one word of advice, kind of to someone coming in wanting to kind of implement or get started in this space, what's the one thing that you would say to them as a kind of
focus on the biggest problem of your customers and nail it for the next 3 years. That's it. That would be my advice.